Next piece. Oh boy, this is going to tip you. Send your brain cells going sideways and raging and rather angry, but you must channel it, not that type of channeling, into a better way of getting it out, because this is another game changer. Potential anyway. Did you know in 1979 the term person was redefined as a variety of entities other than human beings? Oops. 1979. The term person was redefined as a variety of entities other than human beings. Check it out yourself. Did you know the US Treasury was officially closed in 1921 and transferred all their duties over to the Federal Reserve banks? Currency printing. Did you know under the Constitution only gold and silver are declared as money? Currency is not money. Redeemable currency must promise to pay in gold or silver coins. Did you know the US government or Congress were not authorized by the Constitution to issue currency, only coin? Did you know the Federal Reserve notes are essentially unsigned checks? Think about that. Designed for the sole purpose of creating debt. Whenever there is an increase in money supply, quantitative easing, of which we had 4, remember, it must be backed by an asset like gold or silver. If not, which it wasn't, it creates inflation. What is inflation? A secret form of tax. That is what inflation is. The Federal Reserve has unlimited access to print out all the currencies, which is substitute money, it's not real, with their only cost being the printing and the paper. They then lend out that dollar bill to governments at a cost of 10 cents per dollar. 10 cents for a little bit of printing on a piece of paper. Essentially, those dollar notes are promissory notes, but promissory notes to pay the Fed debt only, not the people's. Here's the kicker. Did you know you can only pay off a debt by using gold, silver, barter, or commodity? With Federal Reserve notes, you can only discharge a debt. Now, discharge is a way of paying off debt via a bankruptcy, remember. The debt is discharged, but they still own the asset, like the houses and the cars. So you've discharged your debt, not paid off your debt. You cannot pay off a debt with currency system. You can only pay off a debt with gold and silver coins. The Federal Reserve demanded that interest payments must be made in gold. So now you know why Fort Knox is empty. But there is no stipulation in the Federal Reserve Act to repay the principal, because technically there was no principal, is why. It's substitute money, it's fake. Did you know most Americans held free and clear alloidal titles until the Federal Reserve Act of 1913? They pledged, the Fed pledged all the property within America to the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, to which the trustees there then held the stock title, aka Rothschilds, aka Marduk. And because you can only discharge the debt with currency, they hold the lien of the debt until it's payable by gold and silver only, and subsequently they claim the title of your assets. Now, the US citizen is known as a tenant or a franchisee, and was registered as the beneficiary of the trust via their birth certificate. Then, in 1933, the Fed pledged all of the present and future properties, assets and labour of their now called subjects. Subject means a person under control or under dominion of another, to render submissive or a dependent, or to bind under the 14th Amendment, US citizen to the Federal Reserve. In return, the Federal Reserve, for pledging all the properties, that means everybody's house, business and everything, the Federal Reserve agreed to extend the US corporation, which is the US government, now known as the US government, it's not, the US corporation, all the credit, currency, which is substitute money, it needed. So they took all the assets and they gave pieces of paper. In return, the US corporation, operating as a government, had to assign over all collateral and securities to the Fed as a condition of the loans. All collateral. In other words, the Fed own the people. Now, the issue was the Federal Reserve never had any assets. None. For their support or to print the currency and back it. So where did their assets come from? They assigned the private property of all their subjects, or slaves is a better term, as collateral against the unpayable federal debt. Why is it unpayable? Because you need gold and silver to pay off the debt is why. Hence, the gold and silver heist from the American public announced in the same year, 1933, where it became illegal to own gold and silver, and so preventing any member of the public ever paying off the debt. So they would never have the asset. That's why it says on your title, tenant. You're renting the home of the Federal Reserve. You don't own it. But you can't pay off your mortgage with currency. Steam coming out your ears, yeah? Should be. And we haven't finished. The Fed also pledged unincorporated federal territories, now known as national parks. They also pledged all of your birth certificates and all non-profit organisations as collateral against the federal debt, which can never be paid off. You getting mad now? Essentially what happened is the Federal Reserve declared themselves as the sovereign, and we are renting our homes, not buying them. And that is why after you've discharged your mortgage and you get the title, it says on the back of it, you are still the tenant, because you never paid off your mortgage with gold and silver coins. You paid it off with currency. So now, knowing what currency really is, you still think a global currency revaluation is viable? A global currency reset? Haven't listened to that. Perhaps it should give you a greater understanding what they're doing. A global currency reset. That means devaluing it, which is another tax. And in most cases, as they print more off and hand you over more of the debt, people still wanting the global currency GCR or the RV are beyond stupid at this point. You're pushing for your own death sentence. Think about this for one moment. In fact, think about it for the rest of your lives, and we won't all be in this mess. One of the offers was the Rothschilds give you $25,000 each. Whoa, great. But it's not supported by an asset. And so then, with all our extra funds comes in, the inflation kicks in. You know, the secret tax, inflation, that's what it is. It goes from 3% to 20,000% like Venezuela, or like what they did to the Germans in 1930, or Argentina recently, so there is precedent for it. Suddenly your dollar is only worth 10% of what it was overnight. So your $25,000 is now worth $2,500. But with inflation, the costs of goods go up. So how far do you think you're going to go with your $2,500? With massive inflation, it will essentially be worth, in spending power, a couple of $100. So from 25,000, you have the spending power of a few $100. And once that's gone, well, you're all going to die. And no, I'm not laughing this time because I'm serious. That is what they were proposing. That piece is what they've done to the American people. It's up to the American people to say, we've had enough. It's up to the people in Britain to say, we're not working until July just to pay the taxes off, when none of the taxes go, or hardly any, go towards the people. The piece further up, and they said they were going to collect, what was it, 3.645 trillion in revenue for taxes, and yet during the census it says it's going to pay out 800 billion out of 3.645 trillion. Only 800 billion goes to the people. This is what's happening, folks. And this is why we have to get real. Put pressure on these clowns. They've stiffed every single one of you badly, myself included.